I'm Alan. Welcome to Alan's Guide to Becoming a Safe and Competent Motorcyclist. I haven't posted anything new in 9 years. If any of you are still here, I appreciate your loyalty and patience, and I thank you all for your positive feedback. I still think I have an important message to put out there, something to make sure that riders start off on the right path and that riders who have been misinformed are at least being told what that path is. And to do this in a manageable amount of time, like an hour. I don't see that message anywhere else. Please let me know if you do. My audience has not spread as far as I would have hoped, so I'm going to give you something much easier and more fun to forward to your friends. Something short and provocative. Actually, it's downright arrogant. In the next 12 minutes, I'm going to tell you the 4 most important things that you need to know in order to control your motorcycle. My challenge to you is simple. I think I'm right. See if you can prove me wrong. All I ask is that you first watch parts 2A through 2D of my videos, about 40 minutes worth, in order, where I go into more detail and do my best to provide a convincing argument. Here, you get only the highlights. This is part 5 of my guide. Previous parts were my introduction, part 1, parts 2A, B, C, and D that covered the 4 basics of motorcycle control, the subject of this video, part 3, defensive driving, and part 4, attitude. If you're still learning, and even if you're not, parts 3 and 4 are probably more important than this one. First, a prelude. As I look around and see all of the guidance given to motorcyclists, where I differ, in this section at least, is that I want to help you get ready for emergencies, or close calls, or even just scary moments. I want you to react instinctively, proficiently, and correctly. If you do, emergencies can be non-events. If you don't, you can die. It's really that simple. It happens every day. In my opinion, you won't be able to react correctly without knowing these 4 basic principles and without you having worked on them well in advance. Parts 3 and 4 have to do with defensive driving and attitude. There, the goal is to keep these things from happening. But here, we're going to talk about what you need to know when they do. I'm going to tell you to think about these things while you ride and use them as often as you can and practice. Get them to where they are second nature and then keep them that way. So what are these 4 most important things? If you are already a subscriber, my guess is that you already know. You have to know how to steer, counter steer, brake, and trail brake. Yes, you have to know other things too. I focus on these 4 because they are so critical and yet so fundamentally misunderstood. Here we go. Number 1, steering. It should be obvious that you have to know what keeps a motorcycle upright. The answer is that you are the one who keeps the motorcycle upright, and you do it by steering. You keep your balance on a motorcycle by steering the front wheel back underneath you whenever you find yourself starting to lean, just like you did on your first bicycle. It's the thing that people say, once you learn, you never forget. Too bad so many people have. Gyroscopic force does not hold you up. It, along with trail and camber thrust, each have a tendency to help steer the front wheel back underneath you, but they are imperfect at best and they can't do it by themselves. You need to steer at any speed, all the time, and not just when you are going straight. In a corner, you maintain your balance by adjusting your lean angle, and you do that by steering. At speed, it may be subtle, but it's still steering. Pressure on the bars, however slight, causes them to turn, which is steering. That by itself is the source of much of the confusion. So think about this while you ride. Give your bike some steering inputs. Call it pressure if you have to. Prove to yourself that steering controls lean angle. Body position and movement are irrelevant. Someday that simple concept will make a difference. I knew a coworker once who fell down almost every time the wind blew. That might be an exaggeration. He obviously didn't have a clue. That was long ago and I couldn't figure out what to tell him. Today I would tell him to steer. What's next? Counter steering. You need to know how to turn. And you also need to accept that counter steering is the only way to do it. Again, at all speeds, period, there is nothing else. We all know that if you want to turn left, you need to lean left. But if you steer left before you lean left, you will fall over like a kid on a tricycle. Don't think so? Try this. Get on your bicycle, have somebody run along next to you and push on your handlebars once in a while. If you think you steer left to go left, you'll be in for a rude awakening. It'll be immediately obvious that you set up a lean to the left by counter-steering to the right. Then you can turn left and go left. You steer the front wheel out from under you to create the lean angle that you want. When you're ready to straighten up, you steer the front wheel back underneath you again. As I said, you control lean angle by steering. It's quite provable that gyroscopic effects are in the noise, and body movement is irrelevant. As you lean your body left, you push the bike to the right. Your center of gravity doesn't move. Lean left to go left only works because the pressure you put on the bars actually steers them, however little that might be. So spend some time thinking about this too while you ride. Watch what happens when you do it. Soon you will realize that whatever else you thought you were doing doesn't really matter. Try not doing those things and see what happens. When it counts, don't waste your time doing anything else but countersteering. So a friend of mine asked, what's the difference between steering and countersteering? There really isn't any. You steer left to create a roll to the right. You steer right to create a roll to the left. The bike doesn't care why you're doing these things. I'm merely trying to emphasize that you steer the front tire back underneath you to keep your balance, and you steer the front tire out from underneath you to initiate a turn. I break these into two subjects merely to emphasize that both jobs are done by steering. Third, braking. You go fast, you need to know how to slow down and stop. I guess that's obvious. But you also need to learn that your front brake is your best friend and sometimes your only friend. On dry pavement, it'll give you 75 to 85% of your braking force. On a sport bike, it'll be 100%. You really can't let that go to waste. The difference between stopping in time and not stopping in time is usually an impact at a noteworthy speed. Never a good thing. In an emergency, you need to get to it instinctively, quickly, and smoothly. No grabbing, no skidding, no panic. If you leave very much of the front brake unused, you can almost never make up for it by adding the rear. Add the rear when you have enough spare time to think about it without losing your focus on the front. As with anything else, this takes practice. But with practice, this might change your whole attitude about how fast a motorcycle can stop. You hear all the time about people laying their bikes down. Trust me, never do that. The people who do are those who don't know how to stop and don't know that they could have stopped instead. Don't let that be you. So try to get in a habit of using the front brake. Go easy with it at first. Keep your mental focus on your front tire contact patch. Over time, use it harder. Try to find out what its limits are, carefully, of course. If you are smooth and gradual, you will find that it's actually quite possible to back off a little if you go too far. I say this even if you have a heavy bike with a passenger and luggage. I know all the manuals say to use both brakes at the same time, but if this is all you do, if you don't focus on the front, at least some of the time, you will never learn to use the front brake to its potential. Someday you may need to. ABS, of course, makes all of this easier. It reduces the risk of using the front brake, but it doesn't put the focus there for you. And on wet pavement or any other low traction situation, there will be less weight transfer and much closer to equal braking force front and rear, and more risk of skidding, and less chance of recovering. So slow down and increase your following distance. If you are hoping for some special insight from me, too bad. Lastly, number 4, trail braking. The need for this is simple, and here it is. You need to be able to slow down and tighten your radius at any time in any corner, period. And I mean now. No time to think, no panic. If you can't do that, it's just a matter of time before something will go really wrong. And trail braking is the only way to do it. So what is it? In short, it means using your front brake and then trailing off of it as you lean in. It's amazingly effective. Using the front brake transfers weight onto the front tire and gives you more traction in the front. That traction can be used for braking or turning, or a combination of the two. If you back off too soon or don't use the front brake at all, you lose that weight transfer, and with it, some of the traction that could have helped you slow down or turn more. This is another reason to use the front brake routinely. You're ready to trail brake if you need to. Normally, you actually stay on the front brake, however lightly, until you see a clear path through the corner. If in the middle of the turn, something unforeseen is in your way, you have some choices. You can add a little more front brake, use the front brake for a little longer, or ease back on it again. This will let you turn sooner and sharper than you planned. Remember, if the bike starts to stand up, you control lean angle by steering, no problem. Or you can stand the bike up, go around the object, and then trail brake again to make a sharper turn later, something you probably wouldn't be able to do without knowing how to trail brake. Of course, you might also need to just plain stop, right in the middle of the corner. None of these choices work well without trail braking. But one more thing, it's just an absolute prerequisite that you do all of this smoothly and gradually, both on and off the brake. And you can imagine that this takes practice too. So how do you do that? The best way is to take track classes. If you do, call ahead and make sure that your class actually teaches trail braking. Some don't. Another choice is to have a friend who understands it take you for a ride, explain it to you, and show you what it feels like. This is not something you routinely do on the street. Unless you actually do get surprised by something, you shouldn't be going fast enough to need it. Even when you use your front brake, you generally will be going slow enough that you're done braking before you start to turn. That's normal street riding. But you still need to practice. If you are really gentle, you don't have to go fast. It takes less brake pressure than you think. Get used to using the front brake, even if you do get off it too soon. Over time, as you practice, brake a little later. Keep on it a little as you enter the corner. Just remember to trail off as you lean in. Even if it is only just enough to keep the brake light on, you're doing well. So spend time on it. Build up your capability gradually. It's worth the effort. On a track, a good rider will do this in every single corner. On the street, that same rider will avoid obstacles in the corner without batting an eye. Other riders crash and die. You might not think you need this, but there may be a time when you do, and there won't be anything else to help you. So when do you brake and when do you trail brake? The answer is that you decide how safe you think the corner is going to be at your speed, acknowledging that you don't know for sure. Don't get off the front brake until you are sure. If that is before the turn, that would be normal braking. If there's any doubt, you stay on the front brake into the turn, however lightly, until you are sure. And you keep your fingers on it in case you're wrong. You won't do this all the time. You be the judge when. That's it. There are many things you need to know, but if you're missing one of these, my opinion is that you'll never get there. Watch my videos and prove me wrong. You don't have to be good at these things right away. Every rider everywhere can work on them forever and can always get better. There are many videos online to help you, but beware that many of them are wrong. Try to look at their credentials. In my case, I've ridden 55 years and 400,000 miles, taken bunches of classes, read books and magazines, engaged in lots of discussions with people who know stuff. I also have a math and engineering background, and I try to have logic and physics on my side. But even after all of that, there's nothing here that I made up, nothing. I've used my background and experience to help isolate right from wrong among all the stuff that's been put out there. For everything I say, there are many excellent instructors, authors, and racers who agree with me. Unfortunately, there are some who don't. Riding a motorcycle is science first and art second. Where there is disagreement, someone usually has to be wrong. I do my best to figure out who. It's not always easy, and I worked at it hard. So there, tell me what you think, and have fun telling your friends. Cheers for now.